All right, let's dive into the metabolic maze. Today, we're tackling a really fascinating question. Why does our body handle different kinds of sugar in such dramatically different ways?
So let me ask you something right off the bat. Do you think all sugars are created equal? You see sugar on a food label and you probably think, hey, it's all the same stuff. But as we're about to find out, your body has a very, very different opinion.
Okay, so meet the three main players in our story: glucose, fructose, and galactose. Now, glucose, that's the star of the show. It's the body's main all-purpose fuel. But fructose and galactose, they're the specialists. They play by their own rules. They don't even need insulin to get into our cells, and they follow their own unique and sometimes, as we'll see, pretty problematic metabolic paths.
To really get this, you've got to appreciate just how precise our bodies are. I mean, every single thing we eat follows a specific, incredibly intricate pathway. And that's especially true for these simple sugars. So we're about to trace two of these paths, and you'll see just how different their journeys can be.
First up, we've got fructose. You find this in table sugar, that's sucrose, and also in things like honey and fruit. We're going to call its metabolic route the fast lane for a reason. It basically takes a high-speed shortcut, like a backdoor entrance, right into your energy production system.
So let's look at how this is supposed to work. Picture it like a perfectly efficient assembly line. Fructose shows up at the liver. It gets a tag put on it by an enzyme called Fructokinase. Then it gets split in two by another enzyme, Aldolase. From there, its parts get sent off to be used for energy. When everything's working, it's a super smooth process.
But here's the twist. This fructose assembly line has like an express pass. It gets to bypass the main quality control checkpoint of our entire energy system, an enzyme called PFK1. It's like a car with a special tag just blowing right through a toll booth without even slowing down. This allows fructose to be processed incredibly fast. And driving in the fast lane like that, it can have some serious consequences. Because it skips that regulation step, the liver can get totally overwhelmed by all the fructose coming in. And when there's too much, the liver's default response is to just say, okay, I can't handle all this, and it starts turning the excess into fat. That process is called lipogenesis. And over time, this is linked to some major modern health issues, like fatty liver disease and metabolic syndrome. So that's what happens when the pathway works maybe a little too well. But what about when there's a genetic glitch in the system? What happens when that super fast lane suddenly hits a massive, unexpected roadblock?
This brings us to a condition called Hereditary Fructose Intolerance, or HFI. This is a really serious inherited disorder where just one tiny piece of that metabolic machinery, one specific enzyme, is broken from birth. It's a pretty stark example of just how critical every single step in the process is.
So check this out. In HFI, the fructose comes into the liver, it gets converted to fructose 1-phosphate just fine, and then, bam, full stop, a dead end. The aldolase B enzyme, that second worker on the assembly line, it's faulty. It just can't do its job. And this causes a massive pileup of a toxic substance, fructose 1-phosphate.
And the consequences of this one broken part are just devastating. The toxic buildup leads to dangerously low blood sugar, that's hypoglycemia, along with severe liver damage. The only treatment is a lifelong, super strict avoidance of all fructose and sucrose. It just goes to show you how a single error in the blueprint can cause the whole system to fail. Okay, let's hit pause and switch gears. Let's look at our second specialist sugar, galactose. This one primarily comes from lactose, the sugar in milk. And unlike fructose, galactose isn't on some speed run for energy. Its purpose is totally different. It's actually a crucial building block. Think of the galactose pathway less like a racetrack and more like a construction project. It gets converted, and then this key enzyme called GALT acts like a project foreman, swapping it into the main pathway. From there, it becomes something called UDP galactose, which the body uses to build absolutely essential stuff for our cells, like glycoproteins and glycolipids. So that's the key difference, right there. While fructose is rushing to become energy or get stored as fat, galactose is carefully processed to become part of our actual cellular architecture. It's a builder, not a racer.
But what happens when the foreman on this construction site, that key GALT enzyme, just doesn't show up for work? What happens when this critical switch in the system is broken? This leads to a really specific and kind of strange question. How on earth can a problem with metabolizing a sugar from milk lead to something like cataracts in the eyes? I mean, it seems completely unrelated, but the answer is fascinating.
It all comes down to a toxic detour. So when the main pathway is completely blocked, all that excess galactose has nowhere to go. So the body finds a detour. A different enzyme called aldose reductase kicks in and converts it into a totally new substance called galactitol. The problem is, this galactitol is like a tiny sponge. It pulls water into whatever tissue it's in. And unfortunately, it gets trapped in the lens of the eye, causing swelling and damage that ultimately leads to cataracts.
This whole condition is known as classic galactosemia. It's caused by that one faulty GALT enzyme, and it results in a real double whammy of toxic buildup. You get galactose 1-phosphate, which damages the liver and brain, and you get galactitol, which is what causes the cataracts.
Now, if you put them side by side, the differences are just stark. You've got two different sugars, two different broken enzymes, and two totally different sets of consequences. With HFI, the main immediate danger is that severe low blood sugar. But with galactosemia, you get the cataracts plus this broader organ damage from two different toxic substances.
So let's zoom out for a second and look at the big picture here. What does all of this really teach us? Well, it shows us that our body is operating based on an incredibly detailed metabolic blueprint. Here's the bottom line. Our genes write the precise step-by-step instructions for how to use every single nutrient we eat. And as we've just seen, one tiny typo in that genetic code, one single faulty enzyme can disrupt the entire system with truly life-threatening consequences.
And that leaves us with one last, pretty big thought to chew on. These metabolic pathways were encoded in our DNA over thousands and thousands of years. But our modern diet, especially the amount and type of sugar we eat, has changed dramatically in just a few generations. So the question is, what does that mismatch mean for the long-term health of our ancient metabolic blueprint?